Hey guys, it's X, and welcome to my Starcraft 2 viewer tutorial. Now, this is not going to be your standard tutorial in where I explain how to play the game or the best way to win a Starcraft 2 match. No, this series of videos is geared towards the viewer of Starcraft, someone who doesn't necessarily play Starcraft 2, but has enjoyed watching games in the past and wants to learn more about it. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I've received several comments on my videos saying, you know, X, I watched that video, I have no idea what happened in it, but I enjoyed it. Now, I'm really glad that people are able to enjoy StarCraft 2 without necessarily know what's going on, which means that they show an interest, and I'm glad that there are so many people who are like that. And I've seen this in the StarCraft 2 community as a whole, because StarCraft 2 is new, and people are watching it, and they're like, you know what, I don't know what that is, but it looks kind of cool. So, this is for those people, for the people who are viewing StarCraft, but not necessarily playing it. So, if you're a player of StarCraft, you are going to know all of this stuff that I'm explaining already, most likely. And this is probably not going to be that entertaining to you. But I'm hoping the newer people will be able to get something out of it, and I'm hoping by the end of the series of this series of videos, they will be able to watch a StarCraft 2 match and get just as much enjoyment out of it as a player would. Okay, well, maybe not as much as a player would, because players are obviously going to get a little bit more being closer to the game. But still be able to watch a StarCraft 2 match and get a whole lot out of it and get the most out of it that they can. Alright, so let's go ahead and begin. Now, this is going to be a series of videos. It's impossible for me to cover everything in one video, and in fact, this first video is actually probably going to go longer than 15 minutes, so it's probably going to be like a 2, maybe 3-part video. I really hope it doesn't go as long as 3 parts, but anyway, like I said, let's go ahead and begin. The first thing you're going to notice is that I have these drones. These are my workers, and workers for any race. See, I have drones, and they're gathering minerals, and my opponent over on the other end has these probes, and you can see here I say good luck, have fun in the chat, and that's a good polite way to start any StarCraft match. And my opponent responds, you too. See, it's very cordial. It shows respect to your opponent before you actually begin playing, and I think that's important. Alright, anyway, so you can see here these eggs in my base are hatching new drones. This is how a Zerg player creates new units. And I say, play your best. This one's going on YouTube. I tell him that. But anyway, this is how Zerg players create new units. These larvae down here, they are the things that turn into eggs, and eggs will become new units. Alright, now, before we go any further, let me go ahead and pause the game. And if you look in the top right, you'll see that there are 3 types of resources. There are minerals, there are gas, and there is supply. Now, you may also hear supply referred to as food. You may hear it referred to as psi. I'm not going to explain yet why it's called psi, but because it's a little bit, you need to know a little bit more about the game before you can understand that. But just know that you'll often hear this referred to as your supply count, your psi count, or your food count. Okay, and the way this works is this blue number right here, this blue icon is my mineral count, and it tells me how many minerals my drones have collected and I have not yet spent on something else. This is gas, same thing as minerals. It's how much my drones have collected but have not spent. Now, I have not collected any gas. Most players don't collect gas until a few minutes into the game, or at least a minute or 2 into the game. Now, this is supply. Now, this, you can see here I have 10 and 10, these 2 numbers right here. The left number is how many units you have on the field. The right number is your maximum number of units. So you can see I have 10 units on the field. I have 10 drones out here that are collecting minerals. And see, one of them is an egg, and I'm at a maximum of 10, so my army can't get any bigger. So how do I change that? Well, these guys, these overlords that I have on the field here, these guys create supply for me. The more of these guys I have, the higher this number goes, up to a maximum of 200. The higher this right number goes, meaning I can build a bigger army. So in order to get past that 10 limit, I have to build a new overlord. And if you'll see here, if I click on this particular egg, right here, this middle one, you can see down at the bottom it says it's training a new overlord. So I'm building a new overlord so I can get more supply. Now, my Protoss opponent has the same resources. If I click on his base, we can see his resources. You can see he's spent all of his minerals and gas, and if I unpause, you can see him gathering more. Alright, so he's also at 10 of 10 supply, but the way a Protoss player creates more supply is by building these pylons, and I will explain more about this when I play my Protoss tutorial. I just want to explain the relationship between the two. See here, this pylon has warped in, and now he has 11 of 18 supply, meaning he can build a maximum of 18 units now. Now if I pause and I scroll all the way back to my base over here, we can see that my overlord has hatched from that egg that I just showed you earlier. So the overlord has hatched, and I too am at 18 maximum supply. So this is how you build new units, and in the past I have used the term supply blocked. Supply blocked means to have too many units and not enough overlords. Or for a Protoss player, it means to have too many units and not enough pylons. Okay, and Terrans have a different way of handling it. I'll explain that later. Okay, before I go any further, another thing that I should note is that this area around here is called creep. All of this purple, grayish stuff, this is called creep, and a Zerg player can only build buildings on the creep. Alright, let's go ahead and continue on. Just keep that in mind for right now. So we're continuing to build up our economies, both of us. And you'll also hear that term, economy. Economy directly refers to the number of drones or workers you have gathering resources for you. So we're building up our economy. The stronger our economy, the bigger an army we can build. Here a drone hatches. Now I'm going to pause. You can see him and this little silhouette of a building here. This is a spawning pool. You can see this drone is about to become a new building. See, the drone begins morphing, and he's creating a spawning pool. Now, why am I doing this? Well, the larvae that we saw down here, actually I'm using most of them for eggs, but these larvae down here can turn into several different types of units. You see down here in the lower right? These are all the different types of units that a Zerg larva can turn into. These comprise the Zerg army. But you can see most of them are grayed out, except for drones and overlords. Well, to create a Zergling, which is my first military unit, I have to create this spawning pool. See, I'll select the larva again, and it says here, requirements, spawning pool, down there in the lower right. So I have to build this spawning pool before I can create military units. My opponent, on the other hand, is creating a gateway. This is a Protoss building. Oh, this is a good time to explain the difference between how Zerg builds buildings and Protoss builds buildings. I just paused the game again. Now, remember how my drone came over here and he actually becomes this building? So I lose a worker to create a building, to create this spawning pool. But the Protoss player, on the other hand, watch what his probe does. He comes over here and he drops this beacon. And now the pylon, this building right here, is going to build itself. It's going to warp in. And you can see once it finished, it will warp in just like one of these pylons. He's doing this again for another gateway. These gateways, like my larva, will produce military units. So he's got two gateways. This pylon has finished. So he has warped in his buildings, and this gateway is done. And this gateway is going to begin producing a zealot. Zealots are his first military units. Let's go ahead and pause. And I'll come back over here. My spawning pool is about to finish. There, my spawning pool is done. An overlord just hatched. And you can see here, this particular egg, if I zoom down on it, you can see it's training Zerglings. Now that I've got this spawning pool, I can begin making military units. Let's go ahead and pause one more time. Well, not one more time, but let's pause again. And we can see this extractor. I also built this extractor on top of one of these geysers. And I'm just going to zoom over to my opponent's base to see if he's built something like that. And he has. See, this is called an assimilator. Before you can begin harvesting gas from these Vespene geysers. Now, this is called Vespene gas, but you're often going to hear it referred to as gas. Anyway, before you can begin harvesting from these Vespene geysers, you have to build some sort of building on top of them. And in this case, for the Zerg, it's an extractor. You have to build an extractor. Once the extractor is built, you can see my drones are beginning to gather resources from this geyser. They're pulling in these little green pockets of gas, and that's increasing my gas number in the top right, which is going to help me build more advanced units later on. Okay, remember those Zerglings I was talking about? Well, some of them hatched, and here they are. They come in pairs, so you get 2 Zerglings for every egg. There they are. They're just kind of chilling there. These are my first military units. They're fairly weak, but because they come 2 per egg, a Zerg player can build up these military units fairly quickly. Now this here, this is an important unit. This is a queen. You can see her there. It's kind of hard to zoom in on her because of the way the buildings are placed. But this unit right here in the middle is a queen. And she's very important, because remember how my hatchery is producing larvae, but you only ever see like 1 or 2, a maximum of 3 eggs at any given time? Well, the queen has the ability, down here, if I click on here, you can see all of her abilities down in the lower right, to spawn larvae. Now, if I use that ability on the hatchery, watch what happens. She spits up on it, all this green stuff, and we can see these little eggs hatching on the hatchery itself. And there are some more Zerglings that just hatched, just so you guys know. And you see this little white bar above the base right here? As it increases, once that finishes, more larvae are going to come out than I would be able to build without the queen. So they're about to all just kind of plop down in a second. Here they come. See that? And that's what lets me keep up with my production. And you can see I immediately click on them and begin building more eggs. Now, I don't know if I've explained this part yet. Let me go ahead and pause the game. Some people were confused Whenever I first, in my first commentary, some people were confused about how I could see my opponent's base at all times in my first commentary. They were like, how come you can see your opponent's base? Well, that's because this is a replay. I'm not actually playing the game live. I played this game earlier this morning, but I'm not actually playing it right now. See, that's why we're able to see our opponents and me. It's because this is a replay of the game. So that hopefully you guys can get a little clarity on that. Okay, now another important thing that you're going to hear a lot whenever you're watching StarCraft 2 matches, you're going to hear a lot of talk about expansions. Now, you can see I've got a building being morphed in, being blobulated over here. I'm building a new structure over here by this patch of minerals and gas. And you can see this patch of minerals and gas is very similar to the patch of minerals and gas that I have over here in my main base. My main base is the base that I start with. But in order to create a very large army, you're going to need to expand, because these resources will eventually run out. You'll see I click on this mineral field and it says 1165 remaining. This one has 1300 remaining. This one has 1170 remaining. Eventually, these will run out, and so will these geysers. You can see this extractor has 2280 remaining. So you need to expand to make sure you've constantly got a supply of income for your building, for your army. So I created a new hatchery over here. It's building right now. It's not actually done, but this is called expanding. And this area right here is called an expansion area. Where anywhere you see minerals and gas is an expansion area. We can see another one, like if we zoom across the map and come over here in this little dark area, we can see there are more minerals and more gas right here. This is another expansion area, but it's important to note the one that's closest to your base. You see, this is my main base right here, and just down this ramp is another expansion area. This is called my natural expansion, and you're going to hear that a lot. You're going to hear things like natural expansions, which means it is the natural place for you to expand first. It is the closest to your base, so it's naturally the place where you're going to make your first expansion. Therefore, you're going to hear things called natural expansion, and most commentators will shorten it to natural. Like you'll hear, like for example, if I can use it in context, you can see David is expanding to his natural, or you can see David has taken his natural. That's what you'll hear. Here is taken his natural, and that's what that means. It means building a hatchery in my natural expansions area. Okay, so I hope I've explained that thoroughly enough.